And there's call the meeting to order at just about 5. There is a little change to the agenda that's been requested that we switch the budget and finance and construction. With no objection, we'll do that. Are there additions or to the minutes? Or is there a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
So moved.
Come on.
Any objections? Okay, then we've accepted the minutes.
This is with those there were some additional changes that were sort of added at the end that Kirsty sent around. And so just acknowledging that those were made and that those look good, I thought.
Anybody for public comment?
Oh, can we do an addition to the agenda?
Sure.
I'd like to add, I've done an analysis of the 3 scenarios that we're talking about.
Yep.
I'd like to give a very brief discussion or presentation about them after the 2 budget items,
Okay.
if that works.
All right. You want to come after the budget item?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, in that case, construction and permitting. Rick?
Oh,
I'm sorry. Yeah, I read it wrong.
So
I just said we were gonna make the change and I ignored it.
Gonna escape.
Budget and finance. I'm sorry.
Great. So a couple of just quick updates. One is that the select board did authorize the signing of the $150,000 loan to move forward with engineering so that we can get going on that phase 2 RFP. We do have a little bit of work that I think we're going to need to do before that gets issued, and Rick can talk about that. But we also can move forward on the historical, aka archaeology, which I think sometimes a little confusing when people hear that word, and then continue to move forward with wetlands, which Rick and I had a meeting with Pat Moulton last week just to continue that conversation, moving that forward, and he has a few things to say about that. I just want to set Karen Hatcher is here as Karen. We're going to talk about the community development block grant, disaster recovery, and there is I want to just set the stage for that a little bit. If I can see if this works. So we've been talking a little bit about this. I'm going to blow this up a little bit, see if that works. How we have like a, can folks read that, or do I need to make it bigger?
Can you make it? Okay, that's.
Is that good? So we have like a 2-pronged funding strategy, right? You know, there's sort of plan A and plan B, and we think that we'll probably end up somewhere in the middle because because that's life. And obviously plan B is the no grant funding, and this is how we get this done. We talked about this at our last meeting. We talked about how hedging towards plan B in terms of the more revenue that we can bring in the event of no grant funding requires probably building on more land up there, because that's the only way other than CHIP funding to bring more revenue into the project to make it financially feasible. So just a little bit of a recap there. So focusing on what I would call plan A, which is full grant funding, versus plan B, which is no grant funding. If we're going, Karen's going to talk about the grants and the timeline and how that's moving forward. And I think it's the thing that's emerged, and not to steal too much from Karen's points, but the things that's emerged is that if we're going to go towards plan A, we need to submit the most shovel-ready project possible. And we have a plan that we have sent through preliminary engineering. That is the plan, which was the starting point, which was given to us. It came from the ad hoc committee. It was recognized by the select board in our charter document as the starting place that we're talking about this particular project. And this is the plan that was largely drawn by Sandy Bitsum with several rounds of public comment, including the public design workshop, and is the plan that then went on and has the engineering set that the town with Vermont Community Foundation spent $30,000 on developing with engineering ventures. And when we present this plan as a packet, it's a pretty impressive plan. It shows that we really have done a lot of work because we have all these engineering documents. We have multiple rounds of public meetings and public surveys to discuss that plan with public input. Is it a perfect plan? I'm sure each of us could find multiple criticisms about that plan, but is it a very complete plan that provides us a well-packaged shovel-ready project? It's the best one we have. And so when we're I think sort of objectively, it's the best plan that we have and the most complete plan that we have. And so the question emerges, and because the timelines were just released last week, and I'm sorry, Karen's gonna talk about this, but I feel like the framing is, just to give everybody the context, so we're all on the
Yeah,
same
it's fine.
page.
It's fine.
We're looking at a September 30th deadline. That was released last week for the Community Development Block Grant. We have to submit a preliminary application, which is a light application. That's due
August 5th.
August 5th, so that's coming up in 2 weeks.
That's almost, no, it's 2 weeks. It's not 2 weeks.
Okay, less than that, so it's coming right up. Less than 2 weeks, and September 30th, in order to have any significant revisions of that plan. That would be drawn, workshop by us, public comment, go through engineering, and then come back to get submitted for that grant. That's pretty much impossible.
Yeah.
And so within that context, I want to hand it over to Karen to say if we have this plan A.
Yep.
How do we, which could bring us millions of dollars of funding, grant funding. How do we put together the most compelling grant proposal we have? And acknowledging that there are other things that we need to do to put that together, acknowledging that some of us may see shortcomings or misgivings with the plans as they are. How do we get those out in the open and address them as best we can within the time frame that we have, if we're gonna apply for this grant, which I think we should do.
Right. Thank you, Arian.
Yeah.
For setting the stage. So as Arian said, last week, the Agency of Commerce and Community Development released the dates for this DR grant. Basically, the preliminary application, this pre-app, is due August 5th. It is fairly comprehensive. It's not a slam dunk. We had a call today, this afternoon, with the representatives from the agency to present our concept and to answer their questions about all the things that they're concerned about Plainfield's project. We've been meeting since we got the date. We have been in meetings and conversations with Pat Moulton. We have hired through the READY program, as we talked about, Liz Curry. Liz Curry is awesome. Liz is also away until the 28th. So this work for the pre-app is work that our group is doing with Pat Moulton's help. I have to say that the call today with Agency of Commerce was very positive. I think we surprised them by how much work had been done over the last year. I don't think they thought we knew what we were doing, honestly. And every question that they presented, we were able to answer pretty comprehensively, thanks to all the good work that's been done. But to Arian's point, we have to go into this application with the best foot we have, which is the current plan. Is it perfect? No. Do we have an opportunity to tweak it, to make it better between the pre-application and September 30th? Absolutely. Because, and we asked this question too, because they don't expect we're gonna have everything buttoned down in the pre-app. It's really about scope. It's about, how ready are you? And we got a pretty good signal from them that they thought we would be ready for a full app. So that's all good. But I think, do we all wish we had more time to continue to kind of work on things and get them to where we really want them? Absolutely we do. But we have this opportunity for this money, and our ask is going to be $7 million. 7 million will get us 6 million for the infrastructure. We know that it's 5-ish, but we also know we need a cushion. We're building into this application $1 million that will allow us to hire a project manager, a professional project manager for 5 years, which will take us from as soon as we hear we've gotten the money all the way through selling the lots, all the infrastructure work, working with the buyers, working with all the town officials, working, somebody who's just gonna see that all the way through for 5 years. What we learned today is that that position cannot work on other projects. It cannot fund the FEMA work. It can't fund the federal highway work. It can only fund this project. Okay. So we also explained to them that what we want to do with the money that comes in from the sale of the lots is create this revolving loan fund. They were very excited about that. That was like a new piece of information for them. And we have had some really good conversations with East Rise Credit Union about some really creative ways that they could design a program for this project that will help people be able to raise money, borrow money affordably and also get grants and that, and work through the revolving loan fund idea. So all of that to say there are these 3 main components, right, that are part of this application. The infrastructure, the project manager, the revolving loan fund. That all seemed to go really well. It all fits with what this DR funding wants to do. So I'm here tonight to kind of let you all know that, and also to tell you that I'm supposed to also present this to the select board on Tuesday. And you have, what did I miss?
No, I just want to also say that, like, to just bring, like, to more comprehensively, sort of bring this all together back with this thing, the plan A versus
Yeah.
plan B, because I think it's good.
Yeah, because I'm living in A.
Yeah,
I'm living in A.
Karen's here to really talk about A.
100%.
And B is like,
Live our best life.
I'm sorry?
I said, live our best life.
And Rick is gonna go more into how we can simultaneously prepare, because we're gonna hope for the best and
Yeah.
prepare for the worst.
Well,
As-
but we do expect that there's so much competition for this money. We don't think we're gonna get 7. Like, we're gonna put in for 7. Probably 5.
That would be
we
amazing.
get 5, we're still golden, right? So we still make that work.
Yeah,
But we want to be responsible and also responsive to what we've been hearing. And we don't want to go in like, oh, we're still gonna ask for 10 because everybody can ask for 10. I don't want to do that because I think that's just not good form. But I do think 7 didn't knock them off their seats, and it didn't have them going, oh, you guys can't even ask for that. But there wasn't any of that. It's like, okay, 7. So this group still has to work on best life versus whatever. Hi.
So I realize we've got to put a plan in front of them, but that's not locked in stone. It can't possibly be locked in stone because things change.
They do change, right? Because engineering has to be done, right? And the NEPA review's got to be done and all kinds of things. So this first is what we believe is our best for right now. But they understand that between now and September 30, we're gonna have more information. And then even as you get funded, you're still gonna have more information because this is the process.
Right, okay.
But yeah,
I have a question. So most grants, you're able to approach the grantor at any point and ask permission for changes. If a better plan is devised, is that an open door?
it is
that
a great
possible?
question. I need to find that out.
I would say one thing that just came up that I think speaking to that, that came up in this call with that Karen, myself and Pat Moulton were all on with 2 ACCDC staffers earlier today, is that it seemed like they were focused very significantly on the deliverables, which in this case is the commitment. They're like, it's great that you're building this land and this infrastructure goes towards housing, which goes towards the housing sub portion of the grant funds, which is the biggest bucket. So it's like, we're in the biggest bucket inside the county that gets the biggest bucket. So we're really in this larger pool. But when we said, well, it's gonna be 40 lots, but we don't know exactly, how many of those are gonna have duplexes? Is there gonna be an apartment building? That's sort of beyond our scope of control, but basically it sounded like we need to hedge and our deliverable is gonna be housing units. So, and within by a December 2030 timeframe.
right, you have 6 years. That you have to meet the goal. If we said we were gonna have 40 units. Right, then by that time, we need to,
But what they did say is that if, let's say, for example, one of those buildings wasn't finished, let's say
Right.
it's mid-construction, doesn't count, occupancy is the threshold. And if, let's say, 39 of them have single-family home, or 38 of them have single-family homes, we've committed to 40 units, and the last one puts in a duplex, we still get it. We still clear that threshold. So like, you always wanna know what's the score by, how are we getting evaluated on this?
right, and
Yeah.
on the other side, I asked the question, well, what happens if we don't meet the number?
That's right.
Well, you
Yeah.
don't lose all the funding, you just lose, they'll
There may be a proportional claw.
claw back a portion, right, for what we did not do.
Hmm.
But, I think, but as far as your question goes, Liz, in terms of changes in approaching, I think, yes, and I'll find out for sure.
Yeah.
But that does seem extremely reasonable, and that's why hiring a professional project manager who can have that relationship with the funder and really kind of work it all the way through, I think, because that's so far above where any of us,
No, you
Live.
cannot manage a grant like that
it's too
as a
big.
part-time job. It's impossible.
And yeah, so no, but we'll find out.
So how is this money guaranteed? Because political winds change if they're paying us out over time.
Yeah, so this money is secured, it's already at the state, so
This
this is,
doesn't mean the state won't change it,
well, it's
No,
HUD
it has to
money,
be
this is HUD money.
which is even worse.
Yeah, but it's,
Is it front loaded? So the
Right.
money
you're
will
getting
go
it all
to
right,
town,
right.
who will hold the money?
so the state holds the money.
Through the whole grant, okay. So we
and
ask for
we-
reimbursements.
Yeah, it gets obligated based
Yeah.
on what we have contracted, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it gets released from the state.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So
Excuse me.
we've been led to believe, so I'll tell you,
I
so we've
understand.
been led to believe by folks pretty high at the state that this money is safe.
Yeah, Liz's question was my question.
Yeah.
Are we getting it all at once or? are we
No,
gonna
we're not
have
getting
to-
it all. at
Yes.
once.
So I have a question. Did they have any concerns about whether or not the town had purchased the land by September 30th? Or the ethics questions that's
Both these
outstanding?
questions need to be answered in our application. So we're working on that. So, and having the correct, like, right now, we know what we know in the pre-app that things are in process. The ethics question has been requested. We're waiting for the letter. We will indicate that. The status of the purchase and sale agreement, where the board is at with that, we'll indicate what that is right now. So just to be able to answer where things are, we will probably have a meeting following the pre-application where they'll have other questions, and so if we have updated information at that point, we can give it to them. And again, then we have till September 30th to have the next piece of information, so hopefully we'll have all of that in hand by that point.
Karen, are the people that you had the phone call with, which was so encouraging, the same people who are on the panel who make the decisions, or is it a different
I
group?
think the two people that were on the call today were I wanna say a level down from the people that are on the panel. They work for the people on the panel, so, but I think Patrick is, he's kind of running things on this DR, it's all things DR with Patrick, but I don't think he's on the panel itself, I
Okay.
think he's more operational.
Yeah, but they might depend on their advice.
They do for sure,
Yeah.
and I think, I'm hopeful that the information that's gonna go up the channel up the chain to the folks who have been having these big questions about whether Plainfield has its act together. I'm hoping that they get this information from them, but I think our goal is to have the strongest application. We are working really hard to have it be compelling, comprehensive, well-written, like answering every question fully. There was a big question about, I don't wanna take too much time, but there was a big question about, well, how does this connect to the 2023 event? because it's that disaster that this funding is connected to. And I sat with Michael Billingsley yesterday and had him tell me all of what happened in 2023, and I wrote it.
Mhm.
And I was able to create a narrative that spells out clearly that we had damage, we had extensive damage, we had 90 individual assistance claims, we had 12 homes that were evaluated for buyout. There was just, we had infrastructure damage, all of that. But there's been this thing in their minds, like, well, Plainfield didn't have any
I know.
damage.
That was even during the time. that was
Ridiculous,
the
right?
view.
But I was able to write it after talking with Michael yesterday and be able to, because one of the questions is, how does this connect?
Mhm.
It does connect. It was the setup for 2024.
Mhm.
100%, so being able to do that and being able to answer everything as completely as we can, that's what we're going for. So
I just like to say, I'd like to commend you for all the
Yeah.
work.
Yes.
you've
Amen to
done.
that.
Yeah.
Good job.
Huge.
Well, thank you, and thanks for your trust and partnership. And we're doing the best we can. We hope that we can get all, we can
That's
get this
crystal
money,
clear.
and we are volunteers, right? We are all volunteers trying to do a good job for the town. So hopefully we'll get there, but step by step, as I said today, it's like, we just take one step. I don't want to get too far ahead of my skis, right? It's like, okay, let's just get this done and have them green light us for a full app. And then let's see what we have to get done between now and then, right? So we have this
When do we
work-
hear about when we submit the preliminary application, when do we hear that we're still or out of the running?
I think we're gonna hear pretty quickly. The reason they're doing these calls, these scoping calls with everybody who's applying, is that they're trying to, like, ahead of that, kind of say, okay, we know what Plainfield's plan is.
Mhm.
Now their app needs to their pre-app needs to kind of match what they told us. So I think, and I don't know if they're doing it with everyone, but we requested this meeting because we didn't want to leave anything to chance. Like, I didn't want to miss something and have them say, well, we're sorry, but you didn't answer this correctly. We're not gonna let you go through. So, but Pat Moulton's been great. And when Liz Curry comes on, we're gonna have a killer team to get this final app done. So I'm really excited about that.
Really exciting.
Yeah, so yay. Keep our fingers crossed and keep doing your good work. Work on your plan B and see whatever you have to do.
There is
But-
no plan B.
We don't want a plan B, but I have to say that I think it's really impressive, the drawings that we do have. I think the plan that we do have in place, the numbers that we've got, to be able to say to them today, we've had a third-party estimator look at, what these costs are. We're comfortable that this is the number we need. We've cushioned it because we know numbers go up. I think we just kind of knocked their socks off today because it was like, they didn't expect it.
I'm very grateful that you upped the number. I was very concerned about that. I don't think 5 million will take care of what we need. I just don't. And I mean, I don't know what I'm certainly not basing that on my expertise, but I just have
Everything always costs more than we
Yeah,
think it's gonna, and it takes
absolutely.
longer to do than we think it's going to, right? That's just the world.
Yeah, they also said on the call like this, the guy said, well, we're glad to see that, all these projects get proposed and then they find out that a third of the property is wetlands. And we said, well, the budget already doubled and a third of the property is already wetlands. And all these things that we already, all these.
You've been through it.
Yeah, exactly. The surprises are already out of the box.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, I know you have.
Yeah.
lots to talk about.
One more quick question, in the design part, we have our engineer, whatever, we're getting our engineer study on an existing design. For the number of units, is there anything in there that restricts us as far as how much that can change for the final
I
app?
think you just have to, what they're looking for is how many housing units affordable, like for low and moderate
Moderate.
income, right?
Mm.
If we represent a number, we need to stick to that number, right? That should not change.
Got it.
If you wanna change lots, or you wanna, whatever. You have
Yes.
probably a little wiggle room, but I would say they're looking to make sure we're providing. That we're doing what we said we would do. And because your budget isn't gonna, the numbers won't work if you go too low, right? It's gonna be like way too high per unit.
Yeah.
That they're not gonna wanna fund it, so we have to hit that sweet spot, so I wouldn't. You know, and I think something Arian said today, which I think I hadn't thought about, but like, if we have a number of multi-unit dwellings up there, we're gonna get to the number we need without having to have every lot filled right away. Like, it can be, like, we can get there, but I think if we can get the multi-dwellings to happen in the sooner, in the early part of the project, then that puts us in a really good position to get, like, if we have Down Street and Habitat early in, you've already got 15. Right? If you said 40, you've got 15. So then it's like, okay, let's work on the rest.
Do we have a number for low income, committed number?
10.
Well, that's 15, because
Oh,
down
15,
street,
yeah.
15 right
because down
now.
street
So
is
that's our
10.
committed number.
That's
The application she's asking, not how many we have. committed
No,
to
that's,
Right, for the
for
application.
the application, though, I mean, though, we've touched base with those organizations and they've said, if this moves forward, we have every intention. I mean, Habitat for Humanity has sent us I haven't circulated it because it's not an actual document yet, but they sent us a sample MOU that that would obligate them to do this as and to the extent that an MOU obligates you, but it's definitely the next step up from here's a letter.
Right.
This is like, no, if this happens, we are really gonna put our all behind building 5 duplexes, aka 10 units.
So I'm confused though, of the 40 units, what portion are we saying in the application are gonna be affordable?
Well, we have to hit that 70% threshold.
right.
70% to
70%.
40%, we're still there. Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
what's that make, 29 units or something?
Out of the 40.
Yeah.
Must be affordable.
Must meet that 80%, we have to be able to show that people of 80% LMI or lower can afford to do this, like we'll have to show, here's how the loan process could work. And then the more that we can show an actual identification of buyers, the stronger our proposal will be, which is where people who are committed from the prospective buyers group, they're not gonna be legally obligated, right? I mean, it's not like we're gonna tie everybody up in paperwork here, but like, good faith, these are the people, this is what they're gonna move forward, and then we can do that in addition to the 15 units from Down Street and Habitat for Humanity. Those are already gonna be obligated to fit in that box,
So
because
that's
like,
13 more units.
So you just need 14.
so another 14 more units, is
And
that?
if you're selling lots at the low market for folks who are, like, I don't know what the structure is yet. You guys are working on that, but if it's below market and we can create, we have opportunities for folks to get these kind of loans from East Rise or other lenders who are looking at how to support folks at that income level to be able to build housing. We can make a strong case for getting folks who actually were displaced or people who want to stay in town and either move from a rental to a home of their own. We can get there, but we have 6 years, right? It's like, it doesn't all have to be done right away in the first, right? We have time, and that's why I think having professional help, having a good pro forma and kind of understanding what are we shooting for and what are our goals here, I think we can get there.
And just, there are, Lauren Geiger who couldn't be here tonight, has been leading a conversation with East Rise Credit Union, which is formerly the Vermont State Employees Credit Union. They rebranded
Oh,
a
Right,
year ago or 2 years ago.
right.
So they're a long time, and being a credit union, they also are more community invested than necessarily like a for-profit bank. Like, it's in their mission to do this. And we had a conference call with some of their lending officers, and there were a couple of things that really stood out in that conference call. And one of them is that we asked them, well, we've heard that people in construction loans are sometimes they're ending up underwater in the sense that the house costs more to build than the final appraisal. And their response was, we have yet to encounter that in any of the projects that we finance. So that's not to say that it doesn't happen, but here's a data set from a real bank that said, this is not a phenomenon that we're finding out there. The other thing that was very interesting is that they are increasingly putting some of their own internal philanthropic dollars towards a program where people are buying houses, which could also be turned into construction financing, with as little as 3% down. And that requires mortgage insurance.
Right.
But they're underwriting that mortgage insurance themselves. They only have a certain number of slots that they can do every year. It is not an infinitely large program, but the fact that it exists is a real thing.
And they're really interested in working with us, so we're asking them for a proposal. You know, like what would all the products be and how would you? How would you interact with us with this project? And we're hoping to get that in the short term, so that we can have it be part of the application, even the pre-app.
Yeah.
So that we can make that, see, we're partnering, we've got Downstream Habitat, East Rise, like we're lining up our partners.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Is there any way they would take the information that you're getting for the buyers with the income levels and, you can have a group list and then have them look at that and
Maybe at
come up
some
with a
point-
proposal?
Maybe at some point, but I think they have a market they understand the low and moderate income,
Okay,
market, and so that's because they've been doing it for a while, so we'll wait, see what they come back with. I think there'll be some negotiation, but it's like, it was a great conversation. I was like, wow, they have some really cool products. So, let's just see. A lot of good things, right?
You ready to move on? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, just to give a little bit of framing towards Rick and also ask a question though of the group. That maybe we don't necessarily need to answer right now, but I think is something that if people have some thoughts that occur right now and something to think about is. If we do put this plan forward, which I think we should formally endorse as a group. And if for Plan A, because it is the strongest plan we have, what are the specific concerns with that plan? I think it'd be good to voice those, to write them down and try to address them as best we can between now and when we really have to send this on September 30th.
And I'd say sooner.
Well, yeah,
But
we
I
have to have
mean,
like a select board
if-
hearing and all the stuff prior to that.
If this group could start to identify what those things are, so that we could then figure out, are there easy ways that we could address those without having to invest a lot of money and having to go through a whole long process again, like how could we make some of those minor revisions or more important revisions, right, that mattered to this group, or the advisory, to get it closer to where we want it. But
Are you asking us to formally endorse a plan?
I am
I
asking,
would like that if
great,
this group would support the work that the grants office is doing on the behalf
I
of
think
this
that
group.
requires a motion.
I would move,
Discussion.
I would move that we endorse this plan. Motion and second, then discussion, how's
Yes.
it go?
Are we endorsing the plan for the sake of the application?
The
As-
pre-app.
The pre-application.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
that's good.
For the
I have
sake
a
of the-
question. I feel like we've seen a lot of different plans and they kind of mush together in my brain. Does someone have the plan that we're discussing about easily accessible that can be shared on the screen and then emailed to me for the notes?
It's a February 19th.
Yeah, this is,
Plan.
there's a couple different ways that this was drawn, but it's essentially this plan. And I want to specifically note for John and others that the moving of this road, because it's been drawn both ways, we can submit the engineering as both ways and it still looks like a comprehensive package.
Road and
And
raised
yeah,
cap.
is that with using the extra acreage for the wetlands, the 10 acres?
this plan has about 8.2 acres of built. That's that as drawn.
Right,
So Plan B, which we're gonna talk about next, but Plan A has 8.2 buildable acres.
got it.
Yeah,
I would say that differently.
okay,
It has, and Liz, correct me if I'm wrong, but it has 8.2 acres of lots that would be sold, not actually buildable.
thank you.
And I'm
Yeah.
defining buildable as another thing, and then I'm
Yes.
defining saleable as yet another aspect of
Yes,
this when we move forward. Is that
Thank you,
correct?
yeah.
Am I saying that correctly, Liz,
Yeah.
Tamar?
I,
Yeah.
be-
Yes.
I believe so because, yeah, not all of the lot would be a buildable piece is, I think.
But when
the
we
def-
totaled them, it came up to be about 8.2 acres when we totaled all of the lots that would be
Yeah.
sold.
So sellable land. is
Sellable,
8.2.
there we go.
So not all of it's buildable because there's steep slopes and
Well,
blah, blah,
but
blah.
roads also pick up part of buildable land, so.
I thought the roads were excluded
not
from that
no.
number.
The roads are excluded
From
from that.
the-
We just totaled,
Be-
Yeah.
the
Because
eight
there's,
point two just includes.
Right,
Yeah,
they're not part of the 8.2, but they're part of the buildable land.
that's the issue that I'm kind of getting at, is
Yeah.
there's more buildable and potentially more land that can be sold, and I'll describe that further as we go along.
Okay.
yes, so this is the.
Yeah, 8.28 is currently how many, with all the lots, 40
Right, so
lots. A total of 8.28 acres of lots.
Great.
Arian, I think you should scribble a motion, because I think
Okay,
it should be written. I think you should
Okay.
scribble a motion.
I'm gonna write that on this, and share it on this other page. And Karen, you correct me if I'm wrong
Is
here.
that technical there?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
it's what I'm capable of.
That's not enough scribble up there. It's all typed.
I hate when I'm sharing my screen at work.
Oh.
It's like, I'm such a terrible typist. And I'm typing command lines on for computers, like, it didn't work, 'cause I missed this.
Oh, it's just something about being watched, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Black.
I'm really blackboard is most for you back.
Preliminary grant, preliminary.
The pre-application, it's a pre-application.
Endorses the pre-application submission of the 2025 village expansion plan and associated engineering for the CBDGDR grant.
Maybe you wanna say that you formally endorse the use of use of the use and submission of, yeah, however you do that in the pre-application,
Yeah.
it's just a little.
Yeah,
funky.
yeah. That's good.
Okay. And maybe even to say, in alignment with Plan A.
Yeah.
There you go. Just to be clear.
We there? Care to read it to us?
That this committee formally endorsed the use of the 2025 village expansion plan and associated engineering for the pre-application of the community development block grant disaster recovery grant in alignment with funding plan A.
Further discussion?
Yeah, just one thing, Arian, the actual drawings that were technically done that I think we want to attach are dated 3/12/25.
And associate, okay, great, I'll add that, 3/12.
6 p.m.
Yeah.
So we're discussing. Okay.
Yes.
So we have an opportunity to review, because I feel like Rick, John and I really discussed like wetlands and we altered, the current plan to take that into consideration. So I just want to reiterate and confirm that we do still have an opportunity to submit a slightly different. Okay,
And
Or-
between the pre-application and
Or even-
the full application, there will be opportunity for change.
okay,
So yes.
And just so you know, Liz, I'm even concerned that that's gonna be enough time to get through some of the wetland things to get full agreement, just because of the statutory period at the federal level. And just what may need to happen with discussions, even if we move fairly rapidly. And so I'm hoping, beyond all hope, that we can make an amendment even up to the date of final decision if we get better information.
I think that that may be true. I don't know that any project is gonna have everything buttoned down.
Right.
Is
You
that,
know, at the full, at the submission date, I think. As long as we are hitting the main points, which is.
Yeah.
The LMI piece, you know, that we're not changing on the major pieces, but we are. You know, kind of tweaking, like there's a little more wetlands, or the lot size has changed a bit, or
Yeah.
I don't think any of that is gonna set off a, you know, red flag. I think we can do that, but I think, you know, we can't scrap the plan and start a new plan and expect that we're gonna be able to complete that or be, you know, like, I think what we've got to do is take what we've got and then just work with it and figure out how to make it what we.
Right, it sounds like their priorities, as it should be for this money, is the units that will be occupied, and as long as we stay within. I
Yep.
mean, we're in the same site, we're doing the same amount of units.
Yep.
Yeah.
Basically, and yeah,
Yep,
okay.
yep.
That's
Or the same percentage of units that are low income.
Same
So-
percentage.
same
of units.
percentage of units,
That's
so,
right.
yep.
Are we ready for the question?
I feel
In
like
that case,
I'm hearing that some of us might like an acknowledgement that the plan will be adjusted. Can we add language just acknowledging that?
I think because I think this motion is to endorse it for the pre-application submission, which necessarily says that we're gonna be revisiting this for the formal application submission. I take that as kind of inside of that, but if you have other language you'd like to amend to that, Kirsty, that seems.
Could I also just offer that before we make a full submission anyway, there is a public hearing with the select board, so like,
Yes.
there's a whole process we're yet to go through. All I'm asking for is your keep going, Karen, piece here to just say, use that plan and let's keep moving for this time, for this pre-application. I'll come back to you again for the full app. You know, we're not there.
I do think though that, and I would put this out there, that if there are specific concerns, not that we need to state them here and now, but I would volunteer to be a person to collect those if they come to you. In between our meetings, so that we can discuss them at these meetings. I think we really wanna do that.
right, well, so I just have a question. I don't know the answer to it, but is the select board gonna go and have a vote with the public to say whether or not they should purchase the land, or are they going to just go ahead and approve it? That's a question I have in general. I don't know the answer.
Well, I think from a process standpoint, and it'll come to your question in
Okay.
a second here. You know, Karen needs to submit this pre-application.
Right.
The motion on the table right now is just about that pre-application, which is due in less than 2 weeks, if I'm corrected. But I think it is the onus of this committee as sort of per our charter to make a formal recommendation for the full application that then goes to the select board. And the select board is required by law to have a hearing on this before it's submitted. It is a requirement for the grant application for the
I'm
final
reading
grant.
it.
So there will be a published newspaper article warning of a hearing associated with this. It may also be a normal select board meeting, but it will be a designated item that will be warned in the newspaper and other places.
That's good to know.
So
I thought so, but.
so that, and it is also important that while the select board has stated publicly that they have submitted the purchase option agreement to the ethics committee, it has not been signed, and we have received guidance from the ACCD that there needs to be an additional paragraph added to that agreement, which will not change the ethics committee's review, that basically makes it's already a purchase option. They want specific language that says, basically, if this project's not funded, the town is not required to purchase this piece of land. That doesn't mean that we couldn't look at option B, other things, but they want some really strict caveats, and the town cannot purchase the land if it's going to use this funding to purchase the land until we have been awarded the grant and closed on our environmental review. So no funds can be, even if the grant gets awarded 5 minutes after they review it and they say, great, everything's here. If we haven't completed the environmental review, we can't spend $1 and get reimbursed for it. So there's a lot of steps that, so essentially even if the money were awarded and the purchase offer is fine, if we don't clear the environmental review, the select board can't even close on the sale.
And I don't know if I want to go down this path or not, or whether this question should wait, but what's involved in the environmental
So
review?
that's a whole thing.
It's a long.
Okay,
document.
so when I go off onto something else, but I will at
It's
some
like a
level.
long checklist, but some of them are like 5-minute things, like, is there an airport within half a mile of the area? And the answer is no, we see.
Bat that flies.
There is, the bats are also a thing. So there's like, I think there's 22 criteria,
Okay.
and some of them are like, well, this is gonna take a while, and some of them it's like, you send them a map, you show them that the airport is 25 miles away, and okay, that box is checked.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that, Kirsty, does that feel right? Does that feel like a good commitment?
I would still prefer there to be something acknowledging that we'll come back and review things. I don't have exact language, but it would ease my mind a bit to know that we're very clearly saying that we are not locked in here.
Maybe the commitment, maybe the language could be with the commitment that this committee will edit and advise the select board, or edit and advise the grant group?
Or would raise
No.
concerns for discussion.
Understanding that the plan may be amended before final application.
Yeah.
Great.
That sounds great.
Oh, like
Yeah.
that. Very nice.
That's what I think.
Thank you.
Donnie?
Are we all good now? Okay, is there unanimous consent? If anybody objects, please say so now.
Well, can we wait till he's?
Oh, yes.
done?
Sorry, I'm
Sorry.
Okay.
Is that good? Under, okay, with the understanding.
DR's grant submission. Okay.
Is Christy good? Christy, you good with that?
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, the EVEAC formally endorses the use of the February 19th, 2025 village expansion plan and the associated March 12th, 2025 engineering plans for the pre-application submission of the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Grant in alignment with funding Plan A, this above, with the understanding that the plan may be amended prior to final CDBG-DR grant submission.
Okay. Let's try it again. Do we have unanimous consent to accept this motion?
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Let's move on.
Okay.
Thank you, Karen.
Yeah.
No,
Thanks, Karen. Thank you, Karen.
Thank
I think.
you, Karen.
Walker, did you want to go now?
Yeah, I wanna go.
Okay,
I'm sorry, could I just say one more thing about Plan B?
Go.
To give, so Rick is gonna talk about this, and I know, but the way that Plan B can work, there was a question that I brought up last time about how do we do engineering while pursuing both Plan A and Plan B at the same time? And, you know, because we only have engineering to do once. So what that means is, I'm gonna stop this sharing, I'm gonna share this other map. So what that means is that if there are additions of such of land that you and John and Rick have been working on, that those additions would need to be the core of the engineering. The engineering for Plan A would need to stay the same, but if Plan B are additions to that engineering, they would basically be outside of this core. So if you add another water and sewer line out of here, that's great as long as the core stays the same. And in that way, we can engineer the whole thing.
It's just an addition instead of a difference.
Exactly. So, does that make sense?
Well,
We'll get to that.
Okay, so
How about we- can we get to that
Okay,
later?
sorry, it felt important to say why Plan A versus Plan B,
Totally.
so maybe I was out of order.
Yeah, it's messier than that.
You
but we'll
were,
get
but-
there.
Okay, all right,
We're
sorry, then I'll stand down, it's Walker's turn, great.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm gonna share my screen. So don't worry about the numbers, y'all.
yeah,
What I've been doing is a bunch of number crunching. I got an amazing calculator from the Vermont Economic Progress Council. They handle TIFs. And they gave me their TIF calculator that they've used for other projects prior to CHIP passing. And I modified it a little bit. I was kind of working off of a more simple set of numbers and spreadsheets. And they gave me a very comprehensive one, which is the sheet that you use when you're doing a TIF application.
Walker, can you just explain the difference between a TIF and a CHIP?
Yeah, a
Or-
TIP, right, a
Okay.
CHIP is a TIF. It is a tax increment financing, and I'll get into that in a second. It's basically what a CHIP is, though, is sort of specifically geared towards our situation. It's geared towards a town or a developer. It doesn't have to be a municipality, but it's geared towards an entity creating added tax value in a specific area. CHIP is much more tailored towards putting in, pre-funding infrastructure so that developers or builders can add housing. It's very specifically about housing.
Okay.
And adding tax value to the town. And so it's in that way, it's not really geared towards, let's say, 200 unit apartment blocks in Burlington. It's more like it could be an individual house that was abandoned and then demoed, and then there needed to be some funds added to build that house out and sell it as a low-income house. And then those funds are applied to any loan that was taken out to build the house, taken from the taxes paid. So what I did is I adapted the Vermont Economic Progress Council's calculator. I took the parts of that calculator that are the meat of it, the things that are functional, which are essentially tax collection and bond payments, and how those two things balance out over time. And then I added our project cost, our initial project cost and our estimated value of housing after everything's built. And I put all of that into a timeline, right? So it's going to be, I'm fairly pessimistic here. It's going to be 2 years for the infrastructure build and 4 or 5 years for the actual housing build after that. And then I applied some of the rules that the CHIP law, they're still in the rulemaking process, but some of the basics that the CHIP law puts forward, which is that essentially you can take 85% of the municipal, they require you to take 85% of the municipal taxes collected on that added property value. And that goes towards any bond payment. And then you can take up to either 75 or 85% of the education homestead tax on that added property value. And instead of it going to the state and pooled into funding, that goes directly to the town to pay off a bond. And so that, or pay off any kind of loan. So, and that's an interesting thing, because there's been this pool, there's a, cost sharing in the state around education taxes. And really, the town gets money based on how many people are in Twinfield. It's not based on how much taxes we're collecting in Homestead, right? So if we add 40 units and there's a bunch of families and there's more students in Twinfield, that's, and even in a CHIP scenario where that money is going, instead of to the education, it's going to paying off some of the infrastructure for 20 years or 15 years. We're not losing out, like Twinfield isn't losing that money.
Right.
So what I did is I looked at our worst case scenario. So that I have three plans. I have plan A and plan B are what we talked about, and there's this middle plan, which is like, we get some of the DR grant funding, we have lot sales, we're targeting, the DR grant funding is like, yeah, you get 2 million, let's say, and you still need to meet that 70% threshold for low income. So, basically, I have three plans that I want to really quickly talk to you about. But before I talk to you about that, I want to say one thing. These three plans are encapsulated, meaning if we take out a bond and we pay it off with CHIP over a 20-year period, there's risk to the town, like there's risk whenever any town or entity does building, right? But there's no financial negative impact on a cash flow basis to this town. There's only benefit. And I'll talk to you about, and even in this worst case scenario, I'll talk to you about that in a second. So in the worst case scenario, this is laid out by Arian, and I want to just stick to those numbers. We're minimizing our infrastructure costs. 4 million, sorry. We're going as cheap as possible. I don't know if that's possible or not. Something about it seems impossible. We're maximizing the amount of units and the amount of essentially housing value, property value on that location. So in that case, we would be adding to that loop. We would be going above 40 units. And most likely we would need to, because we're not getting grant funding and we're not sort of worried necessarily in this scenario about making it incredibly approachable for low-income housing, we would need to offer more lots available for higher income in order to make the tax income. So I did this is all rough calculations, but I'm looking at a housing value in around 17 or 18 million. So we have an infrastructure cost. We have a housing value after everything is built. We have a certain amount of years that it takes to build that housing where we're not collecting extra taxes on that. Well, we'll be collecting some extra taxes on the lots, but we're not collecting extra taxes on the housing value. And then we have a bond amount that we need to cover both the total infrastructure cost, as well as that timeline between when we get the bond and when we're getting enough property taxes to pay it off. And so that's something I talked to the Vermont Bond Bank about yesterday. We had a great conversation. They're aware of our project and already. And they were also surprised about how well organized we were, by the way, as far as like having a rough plan. They mentioned something about doing essentially what's called a ban, which is a type of loan where you take out a certain loan that can be refinanced with a bond after the infrastructure is built and your lots are sold. And then, so that's like a initial 2-year loan that you then can either pay off with grants, like a CDBG grant, or a any other kind of grant or a bond. And that bond is then set in stone because bonds you can't refinance a bond, right? It's just if you take out a 15-year bond, you're going to pay that interest exactly for 15 years. I also asked them what their percentages are. I had gotten conflicting information from the state. Some people are saying the market rate for bonds was 6%, which is unaffordable for this time for anybody. I was assured by them that it's significantly lower. For a 20-year bond, it's in around 4.5%. For a 10-year bond, it's in around 3.5%. depending on the payments per year as well. So in this worst case scenario, we're increasing our lot sales to 3 million. That would close in 2028, so I'm just putting all of this stuff in timeline, essentially. We have an initial bond or initial loan that we would need to take out of, 5 million roughly, to cover both the interest and the infrastructure, the minimized infrastructure costs. And then we have a lot sale of 3 million, so we have both interest and an extra cost of 1 million or so left over that we would need to fill with a chip funding, essentially. And so I did like basically a cumulative balance for the town based on this project and these numbers and what it would, how much bond we would need to take out in the beginning, or how much loan we would need to take out in the beginning. To do the infrastructure, to sell the lots, make that income, and then maintain a positive cash flow. So that means that this project would not be costing the town $1. It would only generate income over time. And that's based on chip, essentially, as well. So I'm looking at a 30-year timeline horizon, but I want this cash flow to always be positive. I never want to dip into any other funds, right? So we would, in this scenario, we would have a $4 million project. We would have a $5 million bond/loan that would, change into a bond after the infrastructure is made and the lots are sold. That bond would be lower. So I'm actually sort of in a worst case scenario because I'm showing this as a single loan paid over 10 years at a high interest rate. And the other part of this is that this is not accounting for whether we qualify for SRF bonds, which are 0 to 2%. If you're fixing a water supply, or if you're fixing clean water, wastewater, and drinking water, those are loans that the Vermont Bond Bank sort of administers at 0 to 2%, and those are backed by the EPA. There's a lot of rules with that kind of bond, and what they were saying to me is that most of the sort of dogma around it is fixing current water systems. But there's a potential argument to be made that because we are dealing with a disaster and we're losing 18, 19 units on our current existing water supply, essentially we're relocating or fixing that water supply.
I did speak with the administrators of both of those programs,
Yeah.
and they said exactly that. They said
Right.
we would have an eligible project, but the caveat that they gave is that those loans are competitive.
Yes. and
Meaning
that's
so
what
that
I
we
heard
would
too.
we'd have to put in our proposal.
Yeah.
And they said they're competitive and every year the whole allocation is gone.
Yeah.
So.
And so that's what,
There's not
that's what I heard.
even if we had a good proposal, there's not a guarantee we would get it, but we could always reapply the.
So I'm not calculating for that,
Yeah.
but we could apply for it later on, and those are also forgivable.
And would that be for just this specific, the sewer water?
There'd be a lot of this
piece of it?
infrastructure,
Yeah,
yeah.
but it would have to be specifically, so we have to kind of piecemeal
Mhm.
at that point.
Yep.
Okay.
So, in this worst case scenario, in this schedule, in this timeline, we are requiring chip funding. Right, so that means that we would need to be taking 85% and 75% out for 10 years, essentially. It's a minimal amount of chip funding because we're raising our lot sales quite a bit, right? But it covers our bottom line as far as a town financially. And then over a 30-year period, the difference in taxable income generated is $8.2 million, right? So if the project did not happen, that's zero. We're still collecting taxes on a property value at $350K. as of this year. If the project happened in this worst case scenario, even after paying off the loan, our cumulative balance is 8.2 after 30 years. And I chose 30 years because it's kind of like, that's the timeline where everybody would also have their houses paid off, right? That's when this whole kind of project is financially solvent and over for everybody. But at the end of the chip line, which would be a maximum of 20 years, we're still at a cumulative plus of 4.2 million. So that's the worst case scenario. The next one is the middle. So I'm adding to a more realistic infrastructure cost of 5.5 million, which might go up. And then also minimizing the total housing value. This is assuming, this is kind of coming off of some of the numbers that I'm seeing from your group, Elon. Like the reality of what people can afford to build, what people want in this scenario, the people who are attracted to moving here. And so this is a really conservative value of 12 million. And that's something that Sandy also came up with as well.
Which is 40 units at $300,000 average.
Yeah, but that's a 250K value of the home, and that's a very small value. It's like half of the average value of a Vermont house. So that would be so 350,000 per parcel essentially valued. So that's a high infrastructure cost, a low housing value, and then a bond amount that's a 15-year bond. I'm trying to minimize the amount of years to pay off the bond, and then the associated percentage, rough estimate that I got from a bond bank. And in that scenario, we would be able to do 85 and 85%. So if it was actually, it's meeting all the requirements for affordable housing, at that point, you can do 85% of the homestead. You can take 85% of the education tax and it goes towards the town. So oops, hold on, something's going on. So that pencils out. Oh, and then we have 2 million in grants. I'm feeling like I'm conservative by saying 2 million after our last conversation, but I'm just keeping it at 2 million. So this is hitting our target for affordable housing. It is still cost neutral to the town. It is also minimizing our lot. This is the market rate calculation that was done for all the lots in the current plan. 2,140,000.
I think it's below market rate.
It's slightly below market
It's
rate.
below market rate, but it was a pricing of the 8.3 acres of sellable land.
Yeah, so, and I'm having those sales happen after the infrastructure, so 2028, it feels crazy to do it before, but that conversation. And so that gives us that still is cost, then we have a bond of roughly 4 million to cover the remainder. And that's a 4-year build time, 2 years for the infrastructure, 4 years for the housing. So all of that gives us a cash positive flow for the town and pays for the infrastructure. Our cumulative balance after 30 years is less, right? Because we're really minimizing the value to the houses. This is mostly affordable. And then we have grant funding. And so I just popped in the numbers that I'm gonna do 85, 95. I popped in the numbers that we're talking about today, just now, so 7 million in grants. And I'm saying that's a 2026 grant. And so then what I'm doing here is I'm doing 0 for the bond. And what this cumulative balance gives us is essentially our amount remaining after building out the infrastructure at 5.5 million. This is our amount remaining, plus the added taxes. So this is sort of like a overall cash flow cumulative balance for the town. We had a really quick conversation with the guy who came from the VEPC here about like scheduling. It seemed a lot was up in the air around that. But essentially I asked the question like, if we get authorization for a chip and then we get a grant, what happens? Do we pay off the bond first? Like, how do we handle all this scheduling? And that is in rulemaking essentially. And that there's a lot of open questions around it. But if we were doing a chip, funding and we got a grant for 7, there's a potential there that grant could really effectively go towards building out affordable housing in a real way as a revolving loan fund. But I have no idea whether we could do both. If we could swing both, it would be pretty amazing. Like a chip could be funding the infrastructure build, the grant could be funding the housing build. As a loan that the town sends, and then that is paid back into the town over time as a general fund increase. So in my opinion, it would be wise to have chip fund it if we can get a grant. Right? Because then that grant is like over a 30-year period, it's just money for the town. In the long run.
I'm a little lost and I,
Yeah,
so. And I was with you up until you started talking about chip funding
yeah,
and the grant. And
Yeah.
why that's good. Cause I need a little more information before I believe that.
yeah. So, I mean, this is essentially, yeah, I'd like to talk about chip. I think there's a tendency to think, okay, diverting taxes is bad, right? The town needs taxes. They need their municipal tax collected. They need the state needs the education tax collected, right? This scenario is a little bit of a different framing though, because what we're talking about, we're essentially talking about a but-for situation where if this did not happen, we wouldn't be collecting any taxes at all to the town. If this does happen over a period of 30 years, we're going to be collecting a significantly larger amount of taxes to the town. Because it's happening in a condensed area, we're not dealing with 50 miles of road to plow per 40 units. We're not dealing with all of the infrastructure and cost issues with old falling apart infrastructure. We're dealing with new infrastructure that's being paid for. So it's not being we're not adding that bill, the infrastructure bill to the ratepayers at all, right? So
Right,
so those taxes in this situation, we're only adding to the tax pool.
So I'm just I guess I don't understand if we get $7 million in a grant.
Yeah.
And it covers the project
Yeah.
as we have it.
Mhm.
Why on earth would we ever want to do the TIF in addition to that?
Because if we have $7 million in grant, we could pay for the infrastructure, which is fine. With
Yeah.
that on the upfront. And then let the homeowners do what they're gonna do and suffer in the market at 7-8% interest rates. Which may or may not add risk to the project on the housing development side. Or potentially, and I don't know if this is possible, we could fund most of this stuff with CHIP, which is cost neutral to the town in the long run. And take that grant and turn it into a larger revolving loan fund, which is what we're talking about. Which would then come back to the town with interest
That's what I
over
thought you
time.
were saying. Okay.
So essentially, we're taking that grant money, using it to build housing, and then over a 30-year period, it's coming back to the town as profit. It's like how, it's kind of like how.
I get it.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's sort of the question, the crux of that, if I'm right, is like how big of a revolving loan fund to have?
exactly.
Okay.
John, are you shaking your head no?
I am, because the grant's gonna be restricted funds. We're gonna have to use them for what we tell them we're gonna use it for, which is building infrastructure. CHIP is for building infrastructure. They're not gonna let us get money.
CHIP is for building
Without
housing.
CHIP.
Yeah, so that's my question is like, what you have to target
Right.
for, whether it's gonna be water. Yeah, exactly. So it's all a matter of timing.
Well, also, this is not a bridge we need to cross at this
Exactly.
moment.
Right.
But the
it's a-
those,
It's a thought.
yeah,
Yeah.
the larger
Yes.
kind of concept here with these three plans is that they're encapsulated within this one location and within this one period of time. And they're cash neutral or cash positive to the town over every single year that the process is going on.
Well, let's hope we get a big grant and have to make this decision.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's what I
Right.
was
To
saying.
have this problem.
Right,
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see the tables, I think.
Yeah, and I just wanted to clarify, I thought that that's what you were saying, but I
Yeah.
wasn't sure, so I
Yeah.
appreciate the explanation.
Where things start getting really hinky in this plan is when your tax value is really low and you don't have grant funding and you're just relying on chips and bonds. So, and you're contained within the 40 units that we're currently planning. So like if we're sort of just going on our own and muddling and wanting to do affordable housing and not having any support, that's where all of these numbers start going negative.
Okay, I think this is just clarifying
Mhm.
that in previous meetings, there has been a question of whether or not utilizing CHIP is
Mhm.
going to meet the commitment to be
Yeah.
cost neutral to the town. I think you're saying that this modeling is saying that all reasonable numbers say that it will be cost neutral to the town, or will still benefit the town, even if we have to rely on CHIP to repay it.
Yeah, conceptually, you can think of, there is a diversion of money in the short term that would normally go to the municipal fund.
Yeah.
That's going to build out infrastructure. But it's not going into the negative for the town. And over the long term, it's only going in the positive.
Right.
Is that taking into account the tax loss we're gonna be looking at with all of,
Right. I mean, there's.
Yes, because it is taking into account, because there's a municipal grand list act that just got passed, and we're getting all of our municipal taxes from that grand list change, diminishment.
So
So-
there, just to speak on that, I've asked,
You folks remember Josh Hannaford, who came here from Vermont League of
Mhm.
Cities and Towns? He's promised me a fact sheet on that, but it's not available yet.
Yeah.
There is gonna be, we have real losses to the grand list. We're all aware of this. Everybody who got their tax bill was, I'm sure, as surprised as we were. So, but because of the loss of the grand list, there's gonna be some interim state funds to help make on that. But my understanding is those are time period limited. It's only gonna be like 1 or 2 years.
Okay, so.
So, which is better than nothing. Yeah.
Right, it's not a. so-
Yeah.
Right,
Can I distinguish between being tax neutral to the town and making up lost grand list taxes,
Yeah.
right?
yeah, I mean,
Like,
part of our
yeah.
charter as a committee was to help ameliorate some of that grand list loss. I think there was a sentence in there. What I would say though, which is if we don't do anything, that grand
It
list
doesn't help
loss
anything.
Yeah.
isn't taken care of.
Right, right.
At all.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of distinction of, there is the, ideally, we want to help, but we're ultimately committed to not hurt.
Yeah.
And that seems like the bigger commitment. Don't hurt the town financially, even though we are also aiming to help the town financially.
Yeah.
I'm also curious, just for the specifics, if in the way that CHIP works, if are you looking at just sort of like what the overall change in the town numbers will be, or can it really be sort of divided out? And the program only looks at the income that's coming from this neighborhood? Can it be
This is-
isolated
this
in the
is
execution?
isolated. In this
Okay.
scenario, all of
Right.
this is
Right,
isolated.
and the
This
way it's
balance-
executed stays.
It's completely encapsulated within its own plan, so
Hmm.
anything in this column that goes red would be spilling into the Plainfield general fund.
Mhm.
And that's in all of these scenarios. These numbers roughly work to not do that. Where you start seeing red in that, in there, is when you have a lot of low income housing. Let's say we have 40 trailers on there, and we put in 5 million in infrastructure to support that, we would be in the red in the first year. After build out. Yeah. All right,
Okay,
And it'd get worse over time.
and it would get worse, yeah.
that's the way things trend often. Rick, you're up.
Oh, what am I doing here? So I don't have the benefit of the.
The timeline.
The time, thank you.
Oh, how do we-
Yes, that's how it's stated on the agenda.
Okay. Review and discuss project timelines, steps and designs. And I'm trying to share. Yeah, click more. So, this week I've been sort of starting from the standpoint of trying to understand what is orange here. This is a timeline that reaches out until January of next year. And a lot of these activities that I've done, which are really hard to read and see, are things that relate to what we have to do as individual activities. And part of what we've been talking about this last week is, yeah, there we go. The grants aspect of it, and trying to get a sense of what some of the deadlines are, and Karen went through a lot of those already. We're in this sort of preliminary application grant submission. Additionally, I think we heard about what the NEPA application is in preparation. That's something that we're gonna have to do to prove our viability for the final grant submission that needs to be done on September 30th. And then we're hoping that the grant approval will be by the 18th. And if all goes well, and Karen figures that, I'll say perfect grant, then we won't have to go into the next steps, which are the chip preparation and the chips submission. And I think none of us are really probably thinking that's completely what's gonna happen. This gives you an idea of what we're talking about for some of those dates, where we're gonna reach out to about September 30th for that deadline. Now, there are some steps that have to happen before that, and we're probably trying to figure out what some of them are still at this point, and with regard to, say, permitting. Don't think people can see that. I'm getting a little closer. Right now, what we are trying to do is understand and verify that there is going to be no jurisdictional status of this as a federal wetland. I think, and I don't remember exactly, there's a 90-day statutory period, and we've got to submit that here soon so we can start that timeframe going. In the meantime, what I'd like to do is work on the assumption that it is not federal wetlands, and we start negotiating with Vermont wetlands to understand what our project is and how we need to modify it in order to make that happen. That's, I think, probably going to be fairly straightforward, but we'll need to make some really careful thoughts and decisions about how we address things that are in the wetland, or it'll get a lot more complicated, a lot longer, and potentially a lot less likely to happen. And so
what I'm hoping is that we can get to a point where the wetlands decision, if not completely made and permittable, we can get some sort of a commitment from Laura Lapierre to say, this is a permittable project, and it seems like we could go forward with it. And I'd like to get that same kind of a sense, probably from Plainfield and from the wastewater, stormwater and water, so that we have all those things kind of ticked off. That's kind of what's driving us on the schedule that we're on right now. But I think there's another thing that we keep wondering about, and I keep hearing about from everybody here, which is, when are we gonna make that decision? When are we gonna discuss it? How is it gonna be actually figured out and made? And how does this all kind of mesh together? And so this is an attempt to do this with our meeting once a week, and I'm looking for really a fairly quick turnaround on what direction we might want to take. And just recently, Arian has brought up the idea that maybe we run two parallel ideas in case we need to do something in tandem. And so we can take a look at some of the options that are coming up here for that. Some additional things that I think we're going to need to make sure happen are the select board steps. And I think that we probably need to start planning for local, for townwide updates on what the project is fairly soon, so that people can get a sense of where we are. Not exactly that everything's resolved, but what has been resolved. And my sense is that there may be some watersheds, like at the end of us making a decision of, this is the scheme that we want to go forward with this option, and here's how we might modify and change that. And then further along, after we get some cost numbers back and maybe have a bit more of an idea what the permitting is, to say, this looks like a very viable project, and here's what we're thinking of, and here's how it's developed. And so the exact timing of those, I think I'll leave to others in the group, but trying to make sure that that does happen. And I think as a, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna decide? And what are we gonna endorse? I think we're doing it all along through this as a committee. But more importantly, the select board needs to be doing some of this as well. This has been done. We have money to spend on engineering and cost estimating. I'd say we want to be very, very careful how we use that, because it's gonna go not quite as far as we think it's going to. I don't think we're gonna get through a full, what was called phase 2 engineering before with that money. And also, we have this bell that will be rung by approval of environmental stuff that Arian just talked about, which starts the point at which we can include it in the grant funding. And so we've got to strategize on how that all happens with the Vermont Community Fund grant. I think that we're clear on what the select board needs to approve and when it's going to approve it, and that that's going to be a public process. I guess I'm not clear on where the CHIPS is going to go and when we would start that process and how that would go forward as a discussion.
Yeah, it has to happen after they make their rules, and that's published in January.
And so right now, what I'm doing is saying that it would start in January at the very earliest, but any kind of a head start on it that we need to make, we should probably start talking about
Yeah,
it.
I would say that they're actively working and looking at our project in the rulemaking process, and they're working with Sandy and any of us who want to be involved, essentially. So they're trying to figure out how chip rules will work for Plainfield, literally, at this moment.
So I think that the select board CDBG DR grant approval is a real watershed, and that might need even some public discussion prior to that actually happening, so that people are aware of what's going on, and they aren't going into a select board and meeting and not understanding what that decision means and what it doesn't mean. And then I don't know what the town approval process is going to be. That has to be decided by the select board. That won't be decided by us, and the timing won't be decided by us. But I don't think it's for a long way out. And so I'd like to just have us focus on the things that we can do something about making this as good as we possibly can, not trying to figure out when that's gonna happen, because it's very unclear.
Can I just note that, even though the select board has their own, their own responsibilities in all of this, that we can certainly encourage, like, for them to start thinking about, like, addressing when they will be presenting things to the public and asking for that public input and asking for those votes. To whatever degree is possible, I think as a group, it would be in the best interest of our community for people to know this sooner than later, because that is making, I think, everybody very anxious about whether or not they even will have a say. And I think if the select board comes up with their own timeline of things, and if we ask them to do that, they can do whatever they want, but I think it would be in everybody's best interest if we can just kind of encourage that to happen sooner than later. I think it would alleviate some stress.
I
for
think we've
people.
all seen that we can't control when and when the select board does. They have their own issues. But I do think what we can do is start a process of public information that precedes a necessary select board meeting, so we're way out in front of whatever they're doing, and hopefully that'll help accomplish what you're saying, Liz, of having them set timeframes that are important, because I think the onus is going to be on us to say, now is the time to communicate to the public what's going on, how it's going on, and not the select board. They aren't up to speed on that, and that's what the town is going to really want to know and understand.
I think we need to at least give the select board a list of here's what we're gonna need and maybe approximate timelines, or at least in order of what we're gonna need. So that they're not caught off guard, or hey, we gotta have this Monday and it's Friday, kind of thing.
Yeah, so far, really, it relates to what Karen's talking about, as far as I'm concerned, because really our timeline, although I didn't think that last week, I realized this week it is completely driven by this grant process.
Yeah.
Not that the final decisions are, and not that the education of the public is, but really our timeline is on that timeline. And so the select board, I think, knows when they have to make a lot of the decisions that are upcoming.
And I believe that Karen is previewing at the next select board meeting, when Karen speaks with them, she is planning on previewing, at least as it relates to the grant. Here's the timeline and here's what's gonna be
I
required.
was more thinking about the applications we're gonna have to make to A&R to all those kind of people, that we can't do that. We're not an official body. The select board has to do that. And they need to know that's coming up and be ready for it.
I don't think that's coming real soon though, John, because
No, I didn't
again,
mean
I don't
so
want
soon.
to, I don't
Warn
think
them
we.
6 months in advance. That's great.
Yeah. Well, I don't even know if it's 6 months yet or not. I think what I'm suggesting is that a lot of those things, the grant applications, are gonna cost us a fair amount of money. And so we're gonna do it after the approvals come through, so we can actually start rolling it into a potential grant that will come forward. So I don't think we're in a position to do anything except get memorandums of agreement on something. And then as we look forward, do what you're talking about.
Because, for example, just applying for the wetland permit alone at the state level is gonna be a tens of thousands of dollar permitting
Right.
fee, which we don't have that
Right.
money right now.
No, I didn't,
But if we,
tell them now,
Yeah.
but we just need to do that.
Yeah, I take your point, John. I'm just kind of trying to put it on a level of importance in the timeline. And, there are things like construction and a lot of the housing lot sales that I think really aren't even on our radar yet, because they're so far out. I don't know what's going on with the site acquisition that came up, but I do think we need to understand how that's gonna dovetail into the discussion. In terms of engineering, what I want to do is contract with Paul Bover from Engineering Ventures to give us some technical support and do some adjustments that may be needed to move the grant process forward and to move the stormwater and the wetland permit forward. I think he's going to be invaluable at that, and I don't want to take it too far. And we're not going to move it into another phase of design, but rather correct and amend what we've done already. So the phase 2 engineering, I don't know that really, this may be incorrect. We may not want to start that until much, much later.
Mhm.
Because again, we want to do that under the financial constraints of the upcoming grant, so we can get that paid for out of money, or as much of it as we can.
Are we talking about SRF funding for some of that phase two?
Not at this time.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think under a Plan B funding scenario, so state SRF is the state revolving loan fund, which would be the clean water and the
component.
drinking water.
Mhm.
And clean water means sewer, believe it or not, but that is how they put it. And those are the very low interest loans, which come with some grants which are competitive. So I think that would be under a, Plan B funding scenario.
Okay.
So could you just clarify something for me? The wetland permit, is that prior to them purchasing or after they're purchasing as far as when it's scheduled?
Well, I'd answer your question as yes, Vicky, it's both.
Okay.
I think we need to start that process now, but we have to touch it lightly. And get a real sense of, the wetland area is delineated.
Right,
And we need to work within that delineation as we move the permitting process forward.
okay.
But I don't think we want to take it, as Arian said, to the point where we're submitting an actual application until we have the ability to do that under the grant funding that Karen's working under.
So
It's
what
probably
do
a
you-
next year thing.
And if I could, there's just a level of nuance there that we can get a letter from the ANR that says this project is permittable as described
Okay,
without filing the permit.
okay.
And
'Cause
we've gotten a real good indication from Laura that she will do that, and that qualifies as shovel ready, which I think is fantastic.
I'm just going back to kind of thinking about the select board, if they have to make a decision by September 29th on whether they're purchasing the land or not, what do they,
They don't have to.
they don't have to.
The
My
CDBG
understand-
grant can be given. But it has to be, that land. Can't, under that, what I'm understanding is you don't get any of that grant money until. Everything is in place.
So
You
the
can't,
select board is signing the purchase option on
Yeah.
the land is the
Yeah.
intention, and that option does not obligate the town to buy the land. It allows the town to buy the land at a specific price if the conditions are right, which are stipulated in the option. Is that?
So it's basically an MOU that allows the town a way out, but allows us to move forward with the planning grant, with the CDBG-DR.
Yes, and the language is very specific in the grant that we have to have quote unquote site control to apply for the grant. Because if we don't have that, it's dead on arrival.
Got it?
And site control is this option, which means the town has the right to buy the land at this price.
Got it.
But the town
Okay.
is not obligated to buy the land, because
Yeah.
what if we don't get the money?
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you for clearing that up for me.
Sure.
All right.
So this is a lot to digest. Kirsty, I'm gonna send you a copy of this in PDF form. And people can just zoom in on it. I see this as a draft and just a first start at a timeline that we're gonna have to organize more as we go forward. And a lot of what we're gonna be doing as a group, I think, despite all the technical stuff we hear about, is really the public awareness and education part of it. That's really really a major and key part of the whole thing.
But just getting the steps we need to go through was huge.
yeah. Is there a way to publish this and make it collaborative?
I can give you a copy of my
Google
Excel
Drive.
file.
Yeah, just pop it
on Google
on,
Drive.
put it in the Google
Yeah.
spreadsheets and then
Google
share it.
Docs.
Cause then we can.
What's Google Docs? Do you have Excel?
What's essential?
Do you have Excel? You know, or you can take it over. I don't care either way, but I'll send a PDF for people, which
Yeah.
they can mark up and adjust as they want. And I have somebody else would like to take on the authorship of this in Google Drive and keep it running and going and updating. I'd love that.
I think, yeah, cause I think
Says.
there's gonna be, there's gonna be people who are dealing with the timeline for. Certain parts and other people who are dealing with that timeline for others, and it'd be great to have this as a master plan then. essentially. where they can just-
Is interest implying something here? Can I give you this and you will work with it?
Yeah, you can send it. my way.
Oh, good.
I'll share it.
Don't worry.
Not worried about that. I don't.
Anything else on this one?
Yeah, we'll have it be it.
Okay, moving right along then. Are we done, Rick?
Yeah, I'm done with that.
Okay. Eli, prospective buyers? I'm sorry. John, I didn't hear you.
Rick's got one
Um,
section.
Yeah, go ahead and hit,
The blade.
stop sharing and share again. You have to share a different app. Right here.
Adrian, would you be able to show that
There, there.
Google slide that I sent you?
And
for
then-
me?
More.
Let me, I'll work on that.
That might just die.
Is it updated? It's not updating up there. Done. I'll just zoom in. I was hoping I could make it bigger on the screen, which I. To here.
Yeah, what application is that?
It's
Oh, that's your wrapping, okay.
no, it's. Sorry. for the
Under
slowdown.
window, I think you can go full screen.
Well, I tried that already and it didn't seem to want to do it. I don't know. Okay, well, I'm just gonna zoom in a bit on this and hopefully that will get us to where we want to go. This is the current site plan here. And why I say it's current is because it has the revised wetland delineation on it. And I think this is a discussion point that relates to what we were talking about before. Of can we and what should we do to modify the wetland, can we and what should we do to modify the application as we move along? What I'm struggling with right now is that this new delineated wetland boundary and buffer well into this, and we lose 3 or 4 lots out of this existing project.
On the road.
Well, and the road too. The road crossing I'm less concerned about. That seems to be something that we know how to do. But that's a toughie. And there's one other spot, but it's really not quite as it's not quite as difficult. And it's down in this 3-block area right here. We're bumped in, but that's solvable. The real problem is this pooch out right here that happens. Go ahead one. Oops, I want to go back one. So here is a breakdown of what we looked at as being the saleable land on the site. And this ends up being about 12 3/4 acres on the site. What's you can take a look at what we've done for what we've done here. And that is that we've decided that probably selling wetlands to individuals, given our permitting situation, is not a great idea. But we could probably sell, there's a dash line that runs right along through here. We could probably sell the buffer to them. Because the buffer would be usable to individuals. And so this overall plan uses all of the land to the property line and all of the land to the buffer or to the wetland area throughout the project site. And so there is more land, obviously. There's this 12 3/4 area of acreage that could be used.
That land is all actually buildable, you're saying?
No, I'm not saying it's buildable. This is too steep.
Right.
This here is within the buffer.
I see.
So
Yeah, yeah.
depending on what you're actually asking for, that number changes. But this is the area that we have to work with in aggregate, this.
It's sellable, it's not buildable.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know what value that discussion really has, the idea that it's sellable, but I think it might have some. Because I think we shouldn't sell some that we were planning to, and we can probably sell more that we weren't necessarily planning to, depending on what we want to do. So what we've done is just a series of 3 more tests of the site. These are really not meant to be even design concepts, but the question to me becomes, what do we do with this area right here? We're losing, I'm reasonably sure we're gonna lose this lot here for stormwater retention. I don't think, and we may, but I really don't think we're gonna find it valuable enough to use the buffer as stormwater treatment. We may be able to use some of it somewhere, but I'd like to have a plan not to. And so we're losing 1, 2, 3, and part of a 4th lot here. In addition, we're losing some area right in here. If you look underneath the white layer to the zoomed in area, there were 4 really small lots right in this area that existed before. What I've done with this option is move them and their shared car area over into here. And then I brought a shared drive in with this scheme, as Arian was talking about, to get us 2 to 3 more spots in there, depending on how you want to look at it for the shared spots. This option keeps a fair amount of area down in the hill area, the hill spot. That makes sense to you. So there's this whole area that we really haven't been using before, and part of it we're still not using right in here. And the question is, what are we gonna do with that? One thing I've talked about is trying to use that for some waste area and increasing the height of the hill to potentially improve the viability of this. So that still exists with this option. This last of the former shared drive lots on this lot C becomes almost unworkable. So I've stolen a spot over the stone wall here to improve that as a site. So that's one option that really maintains the 40-ish lots, and we can do some work with that. We can change it around, but really this doesn't make a whole lot of modifications other than adjust for the wetland scheme. So Arian, this is kind of what I was talking about earlier in the meeting, is that I think this is probably something that we could do, amend, ask Paul to provide an updated plan of fairly inexpensively so that we could just slide that in for the final drawing review. We did a couple other sketches to try and maximize the area that we're calling the hill. And really with these, what I've started to do is say, well, this road crossing through the wide spot of the wetland and where it is doesn't make as much sense as maybe something else, because it doesn't pick up enough lots to make it worth it. You can't really dead end into the sites effectively, as I recall from some things that Sandy has said before. So what this one does is create a couple of dead end areas that allow you to create big lots down in here and some smaller, more compact ones in the center. And then we've redirected the public area so that it faces now north-south and really separated it off in some fashion.
Because the wetlands can be, public area can be wetlands, as long as you're not building anything on it, so.
So that's one, and then, or that's two. I'm gonna just go to this last one here. This one kind of took a completely different tact, and what we did with this, and this one is even more modification, less area to work with the hill. It creates a couple of very dense areas here and here. And I'm gonna zoom in on one of those here. Let you get a good look at it. So this takes away the ability to use a lot of the hill here. But it creates a series of mini lots in here. What I've done is create a provision for shared driveway. And now we can only have 3 on the shared driveway, but I've actually turned it into an alley. And that's a kind of a nice technique to use if we're looking at trying to get the cars in and out of these tighter, more compact areas. And then I've used the outer edges as much bigger lots. So there's a very dense middle here. Then the public area sort of swaths through like this in some fashion. And then further up the sheet here, if I can grab it. Yeah, there it is. Kind of done the same thing where all of our bigger lots are around the outside and up here. And then in the middle, there's another alley, and I pinched the road right here. So the roads come down. There's an alley at this tighter spot, and then same kind of concept of it working through here. And then, as I say, the public area is more of a upside down L shape where it goes both north, south, and east, west. So these get both of the second two get around 50 on the site. I think, Arian, it's tougher to say that we're just gonna appendage out and do that extra 10. I think there's kind of a major move that ends up having to happen.
Yeah.
And not saying that either of these are the right way, but there are two concepts that could potentially work, and those are gonna cost money.
Yeah, one thing that I think was a really interesting take home point from me, when Rick and I, with Pat Moulton, had a meeting with Laura from the wetlands. Is she said, I can permit infrastructure. If there's a good reason, I can permit infrastructure, whatever that infrastructure is.
Yeah.
I cannot permit a house site. And it's not a philosophical thing, it's a regulatory thing. The rules are not in place to do that. And I think with that, which I really appreciate her saying explicitly, is like, she wants to work with us. Laura actually lives in Plainfield, not that that should influence her professional decision-making, but that she understands the concept that we're talking about because she spent some time here. But just to understand the rules that she's working with, and I mean, I really applaud the working group for pulling this together, because I think it really is trying to make, really open things up to see, is there really a better way to do this? That's worthwhile, yeah.
And obviously for now, for what we're talking about, I think probably everybody is fairly clear on this being a better concept of trying to maintain a 40 or so lot count and adjust it for the wetlands, which we have to do. And to the extent that the drawing set that's been done is optics, it's great. But if it starts to get a technical review and people realize there's an updated wetland delineation,
Yeah.
which they may, then we're gonna hit something rough. And it'd be much better to just be right out in front of that and say, we know what the wetland boundary is. We know it's been revised. We don't like that it's been revised, but we've plotted a solution to maintain what we had before as best as we can.
So that has 1 or 2 dead end actual roads.
Well, yeah, it does it have 1, 2, or 3? I think that's kind of a question, and it does beg the question, why couldn't you loop around in such a fashion and make it just one.
But
There's,
one,
the hill is right in this area here.
Mhm.
And so the less we monkey with the hill, the more we keep that free, the better off we're gonna be with our cut and fill balance on the site. Right now, we've got way too much stuff leaving the site and I want a place to put it. Not that there aren't other places to put it, but I like the idea of the hill and trying to maintain it in this option.
I just wanna, and correct me if I'm understanding this wrong, so Walker asked if there were, you know, a couple of different dead end roads. But they're not roads, they would be shared driveways, which would be.
That's correct.
The onus of the homeowners and not the town.
To plow, that's my main question.
It
Yeah,
also,
yeah.
is subject to different fire code, as I understand it, so like if it's a road, you'd have to put a cul-de-sac at the end.
Yeah.
And a fire truck have to turn around it, but here you don't have to.
Yeah, my understanding is that Sandy had looked into that and decided that you could do up to 3 on a shared drive.
Right.
It is not a town road, it's not gonna be a town road, and, you know, there's just, it's too much of a mess to deal with, so people are gonna be responsible for their own infrastructure.
Mhm.
So it does make that slightly more expensive.
Hmm.
Or they're gonna have to do some sharing of the cost of that.
It makes it more expensive for the individual purchasers of those lots.
That's
right.
Yeah.
Right, but it comes with a benefit too, in that in these cases, it does create some greater separation from the rest of the neighborhood
Yeah.
if someone were looking for that.
Yeah, people aren't driving through.
I have a question and then some thoughts. When we're looking at the second and the third options, do both of those pretty much eliminate public access to the hill?
Yeah, I would say they do.
So I want to share that, my understanding was that when we were having conversations with Sandy as just our neighborhood, she really made it clear that she was going to try to preserve that hill. She understood that that was important to the folks who have lived here for decades. And in addition to that, I'm not going to say she made promises, but in the second and third options, the cluster of houses near that hill were eliminated previously in discussions that she had with us. So I personally would be pretty upset if that was the path that was taken, since we've already had conversations regarding this as a neighborhood with Sandy. But I do believe at the charrette it was shared that keeping that hill space was important to folks outside of just this neighborhood as well. So to backtrack on that feels a bit dodgy, a bit deceptive. So I want to put that out there.
And Kirsty, I'm well aware of that, and so is our group, including John. But I think what we were just trying to do is, in the spirit of, what can we do to increase the number of lots without really messing up the balance? That's the area where we have to focus, and how we focus there is a discussion for the group. And I think for right now, what I'm hearing, if I may, is that really the first option that we showed, if it's viable, doesn't really impact, I mean, it may somewhat, but oops.
Yeah, and I think speaking like myself as an abutter, I would find this the most desirable of the 3 you're showing. I still personally don't love it. I could live with option 1. Option 2 and 3 would significantly impact me as someone who has a lot of sensory issues and autism. So I would personally vote against option 2 and 3 if we reach that point. And I think we need to make it clear to folks that, to the public, if we are changing, if we're backtracking on things that we've said before to the public, I think we need to make it really clear what exactly we're backtracking on and what the reasons are.
I think I think in this plan, the reasons are to work within the worst case scenario situation, right? No grant funding, you know, how do we make something happen and maximize the lot sales and the lot?
And
the
I
total
get that. I can
lot.
understand
I
the
think that's just a
financial.
concept. Yeah, this is just like a conceptual plan. You know, it does need some kind of like, okay, well, if we're actually gonna plan a worst case scenario plan, what would need to happen to this land in that
No,
situation?
I
That's what
understand
he's
that,
saying.
but I also
It's
need to
not
voice.
deductible.
I understand that, but I need to voice my opinions in this as well, because while we're absolutely focused on the financial issues and squeezing in as many lots as possible for the worst case scenario, we do have to consider quality of life.
I agree 100% with you.
So I'm a little unclear, sorry, just wanted to ask a question. You said it was a new delineation for the wetlands, so do you have to follow this plan here
Yeah.
because of that now?
You have to avoid the wetland because of that, yeah.
Right, so you do have to
So
make
the-
changes anyway, is what you're saying.
The new, the previous wetland delineation went something like this, I think. And its buffer really wasn't impacting much of anything. It might have had some impact in this area right here. But now it reaches all the way up and across
Yeah, I see.
several sites.
Yeah.
The buffer impacts others as it goes up through there.
Yeah.
And I tried to push things out of the way of the buffer in order to do it, but we are, as Laura said to us, I can't unsee this being hydric soils and therefore delineatable as wetland.
How did it come to a new delineation from what we originally had? I missed that.
Ask Arian, he's really picked about that.
I was just curious, all of a sudden it's coming up, and I'm like, I mean, yeah.
It is,
It's a mystery of life.
I think to me, it really, I'm very cynical about the wetland delineation process as a result of this exercise where it can move and you ask the professional, the wetland delineator who agreed with a different state person last fall. They met at the site, they agreed where the boundary was, there was no ambiguity. He wanted to make it even further south and she said, no, it really should be right here. They flagged the land, everything was good. And somehow the boundary moved. And to me, it's like a tenet of science is replicability. This is not a replicable observation.
Can
Seems
it be?
totally bogus to me. That's my honest opinion, unvarnished. And I'm super pissed about it, to be honest.
Yeah, I would see why.
Yeah.
I think Laura got that message
Yeah.
in your most polite words that
So-
you weren't happy.
So do we know it's not gonna change again because of who's reviewing this?
We're not gonna do another survey.
I'm just curious.
You know what?
Are we
I think
protected?
could delineate it again and it could get worse, but I don't see how it gets better because
Right,
I think this is a bell that's been rung.
Yeah.
yeah,
And if it's been witnessed that the color of the soil at that time indicated hydric soil,
right.
bang, we're done. You can move forward and backward, but that's sort of that way forever. And
Right.
so it can only get worse if
Got
we
it.
ask again. In my way of thinking, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong on that.
Just wait for a dry year and do it again.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I was just curious, thank
That
you.
won't happen ever.
Well, there was, I have heard informally from people who are professional real estate developers that the best time to delineate a wetland is you mow everything and you go in the fall when it's drier. And
Yeah.
somehow the boundary is different, believe it or not. And I think we really shot ourselves in the foot by delineating in the spring.
Hmm.
And we had a spring versus fall delineation, and nobody in the bureau will say that there should be any difference. It's amazing that it changed. And we asked the wetland delineator, please do the service, and his response was, I don't know, which was very unsatisfying.
And just the thing about the definition of wetland in this case. To you nor I, it ain't wet and it's farmland and it has been for a long time. I mean, that is a technical delineation that one, I can't suss out, and two, it doesn't make any sense, but it is what we
But
have.
it's
what we're gonna
the
work around.
law we're working under,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. So it doesn't look like a wetland out there. It's not like a big swamp.
Right.
Well, and we
For
dug
for
a
those
six
of us
foot-
who've been out there.
And we
Yeah.
dug a 6 foot test pit in December in the middle of that thing and found no water.
So
It
wet.
was all frozen, come on, Harry.
Well, we found water.
No, but in the small lower wetland that there's a very small class 3 wetland. That's the lower road area over there, and that's like, no, it's wet.
Yeah.
We dug
It's
into
pretty
it,
there, yeah.
water's coming up out of the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah,
To
Okay.
yeah.
address Kirsty's concern and articulate it, and maybe there's something that remains to be seen, should we have to bring this to the public. The value of preserving the hill as much as possible has not changed. Other forces are impinging on that, but we are still hoping to maintain as much of that hill as intact as possible. But there are things that remain to be seen. Is that correct?
I would add the following, that, I think that, I don't know if that hill is a natural thing, Kirsty, but I don't know that it matters. I think it can be replicated and maybe even increased and improved with some of our fill. And I would suggest that by doing that, we make things somewhat better, if we do that. And I don't mean something at table height. This is sort of my email to you, that I think we can make that taller so that it provides more of an acoustic barrier. Now, what we can't do, and we know we can't do, is we can't fill in the wetlands or in the buffer. I tried that one on for size and it went nowhere. And I'd kind of like to be able to do that because that could help more, but it's just not gonna fly. So does that improve things when I say that, or does it make them worse for you, Kirsty?
Personally, to me, it feels like there's been multiple times where this project has felt like almost like a bait and switch. And this is another instance of that where it feels really icky to me, where the public was previously told one thing and now we're seeing a drastic shift. So I understand where you're coming from. It does not fix that.
I would say the silver lining is that all of these developments are happening in the public eye, which I think was one of the biggest issues, and is inevitable that a project will be developing, it will evolve, it will change. I hear you that it does not feel good. The changes aren't coming out of nowhere, and I do hope that the public at large feels like they have the opportunity to be witnessing that in real time, to be having the information as soon as we have it, and that is some consolation in the event of this, because what else could happen? I think the option is to scrap the project.
I think it's
Okay.
worth noting that when folks talk about silver linings in general, it's painting something. It could be painting a silver lining on a pile of crap. So I think avoiding talking about silver linings when we're working to, of course, improve the town as a whole, but also not negatively impact as many people as we're trying to help. And so when we are also talking about keeping the public well informed, I would say I'm fairly well informed on this project. And even to me, this feels like a pretty big surprise. So by putting out notes now and telling people that this is where we're at with the project, it's still not going to feel great. It's still going to feel like, well, why weren't we talking about this earlier? And we understand that there's new wetland delineations, but it's not going to feel good to people who are getting this information secondhand, third hand, and seeing us already moving down the pike, applying for the grant, saying that these are our plans. I'm just acknowledging that for me, it feels really not great. And I know for others it will too. And it feels unfair to try to pull some light out of that when it really does feel pretty dark.
So I have a question. So the reason the hill in question has been pulled into developable land is because of the request of trying to find as much land that we can build on as possible. My question is, do we actually need the 50 lots? Can we do 40? That we originally said?
This is at roughly 40. right?
Yeah, this is roughly, this is the
one.
roughly 40.
Yeah,
This
it's,
doesn't I mean,
it's being pulled into question directly related to the new delineation, which is taking out several lots.
but on this particular plan, I thought that the hill was pretty much intact and was not, there was like a little encroachment on, I don't know what's northeast,
I think,
but to the
Liz,
left.
there is some encroachment on what we talked about here, and I'm not exactly sure the extent of the hill, but this area here, I mean, I've left as unowned, and that is a question for the group. And this is not part of the building lot, the buildable lot for this here in this designation. So really, this area here and down the page some remains as part of the hill and potentially could be augmented too, is my thought. And I do think that improves things.
So has this been run by like the fire department, so they know whether those alleyways that are coming in, are they comfortable with those shared driveway spaces to get in?
No, it's all conceptual.
I don't know whether Sandy ran that by the fire department before, because we've had these right along, Vicky, and I think that probably if I'm remembering fire code correctly, all you need is an 18-foot wide access path
Okay.
in order to accomplish the necessary access back along there. It doesn't necessarily need the turnaround and all that. I haven't done my personal digging into the National Fire Protection Association documents, of which there are many. One in particular is dreadful to me, simply named NFPA 1. That's the one that I haven't done any work with, and I don't know how far that's gone. But I think from the fire department standpoint, it was a blessable scheme.
That's
from
what
what
I
I
was curious
heard.
from
Yeah.
internally, the town,
Yeah,
were they happy?
I think it was blessable.
Okay.
Folks, I feel a need to point out that it's getting late. We're
Yeah.
after 7. It's more than 10 after 7. There are 2 major items on today's agenda that we haven't addressed. I want to know whether we should keep going. I want to get a sense of the group and try and economize our time. Should we keep pushing and try and finish this agenda?
I think the other 2 sections are gonna go faster.
They're pretty short. I'm happy to.
Are we?
I'm gonna stop sharing then on here, if that's okay, Donnie.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, it just depends on what.
Asked if our group has any, like, action steps that we need to do from this conversation. Like, I feel like this is a very abrupt end to a very heated discussion, and I feel like.
I'm not trying to do that.
No, I respect and am grateful for what you just did and said, but I just, before we move on, I would like to know, are we supposed
That's
to
good.
do any, like, what are our next steps? What's our charge?
Yeah.
May I propose a next step for our group?
Yes.
I would like to continue to push this along towards something that we could have a discussion.
That looks
with-
more.
Yeah, so maybe start to engage engineer and start to understand the permittability of this in tandem with leaving the plans as they are for the initial pre-apps submission. If that's acceptable to everybody, I think that's what I would suggest we do.
Just a follow-up question, are we going to try to mitigate the use of the hill area more as we work this out? Or not? Or do we wanna just try to figure that out when we meet and see where we get? We don't have to. I mean, I don't.
Well, I think there are options that I can think of, and so maybe we take a look at that.
Cause I think if we
what
can try to,
Yeah, it doesn't impact the hill all that much, frankly.
as it is.
No, this
Yeah.
does not change the hill much, I don't believe. And I think the other 2, to follow on what Kirsty said do impact it, and
Yes.
she'd be quite opposed to it. This one gives us a lot more latitude.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I would just like to make the comment that, Kirsty, I feel like we're all in the same boat with the same constraints, and our charge is to put together a plan, and if the wetlands delineation changes or the project costs twice as much as previously anticipated, that's not icky, that happened. That's not like, the ickiness implies a certain motive or a malice that somebody switched something, and it's like, these are factual things that we have to deal with, and I would like the framing better that we're all on a committee charged with developing a plan and faced by real parameters that we have to develop that plan within. And if we treat it as facts that we have to live with, it feels like we're able to work on it together rather than implied that somehow there's some ulterior thing that is directing.
I understand where you're coming from, but I need you to understand how that can sound like artful dodging as well. So I hear you, I know you're hearing me, and I think we need to agree to disagree on that.
Well, if I could have changed the wetland delineation back the other way, I definitely would have.
No, okay, look.
I hear you.
She needs, look,
It's okay.
it's a voice, it
Yeah.
needs to be heard.
Yeah,
She's not the
yeah.
only one that's gonna have the same
No.
caring for that hill. So let's just appreciate
Yep.
that point of view. And I do have a quick question, and it doesn't have to really be answered, but do we really know that we need 40 sellable lots? Have we determined that that's what we really need in order for this to financially work? I just throw it out there
Yeah,
for a
that's
discussion
really
item.
good question, and I can answer some of it.
Okay,
Could I add a little bit to that question? Because I have a similar question, but I'm also hearing that when it comes to funding, if we're going to get a really significant amount of funding, a part of evaluating of the effectiveness of this project is if it's housing enough people. So I think that's a part, it's not just a financial threshold, but is, you don't want to give millions of dollars for 10 people to have
Right.
houses.
I think,
I
yeah,
think there was the HUD requirement for the grant that we need to ensure that we follow that,
yeah.
right?
there-
And that's really the key part, but after that, what do we need?
Yeah, if we're on our own, we need 40 or more. That's the short answer,
40 or more on our own,
on our own.
but not,
And
it's
that
kinda
means like
different
all of
there.
this planning with the hill and the terribleness involved. If we're getting grant funding, that's a lot more negotiable. They seem to not blink an eye at 7
I mean, one of the
million.
goals was to replace, what did we lose, 38 units?
We're looking at up to 39 dwellings in Baya. Yeah.
So, yeah, so then there's the actual town wants, right? The town has a loss, the community has a social loss, social capital loss that's more amorphous that we're also trying to replace.
right,
And so,
right.
so there is a sort of, I feel like overall a rough settling on 40, but if it's well funded and there's less restriction, and a lot of those are duplexes or triplexes, conceivably that could be a lot less lots. It could be 30,
That's
if it's housing enough people, right? And there's enough tax base to fund if it's on the chip side. If there's bigger houses that are housing multifamily and there's a higher taxable value, conceivably you can have less lots in that situation.
And I think that's great. Those scenarios are great to hear.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But overall, the 40 is kind of seems to be a number that's working out on the math side, the grant side, and the town side as far as what the needs are from these various constituencies. I don't think it's a hard and fast number necessarily.
Okay.
You might find that we can only do 30 lots after we do all our engineering.
Yeah.
Who knows?
We're not gonna know until later. We're not gonna know. Until we know what our grant situation is. I'm gonna push us to move on. Eli. And I'm gonna ask folks to be as efficient as possible.
All right, I'm gonna try and be as efficient as possible, and some of this isn't necessarily super new. So the update on the new home fair of part of the Old Home Days Festival of Plainfield on Saturday, September 6th. The official published time will be 2 to 4:30, but we're planning on sending out an invite to our prospective buyers to come early so that they'll have some time just to be on their own with all of these resources. And the goal is just to turn this space, is to get all of the resources that someone might be interested in this room if they want to build a home. So builders, advisors, and lenders seem like the main three groups. And a tour of Johnny and Kay's house down the hill. Are there any questions?
I'm
Yeah,
sorry, I'll make it really
please,
quick.
go
Have
for
you
it.
thought, I promise.
Mhm.
Just one question. I thought, what about Amish building? Have you thought of bringing them in at all? Or I don't know if they would come in, but the farm up the road, on Upper Road, they did an excellent job. And there was an article somewhere that I read where another group somewhere in the US came and built homes for people in a flood region. And so I bring
There-
that up.
Yeah, there is definitely at least one religious organization that we're working with, but is there a specific Amish organization? that
Let
you
me
think of?
find
I
out.
think there were
Okay.
Mennonites
Okay.
that came and cleaned up in Plainfield.
Yeah,
I mean.
Yeah,
it-
there's a
A little, I don't know what the
Totally.
distinction.
Right.
So we've got a whole list and we'll share it
Mennonite.
once it's more shareable.
let me see if I can get you a contact, because it's a farm down the road from me that use them. Okay.
Awesome. Okay, and then moving on.
Yes.
Thank you for helping me.
Big time.
So this is some of the data.
This is being shared. Okay.
Great. Try and zoom in here. I'm just going to go back to the top. Try and get us as much of the information as I can. As much of this screen as I can. I don't know how useful this is going to be for everybody, but this is the proportion of, we've got 28 responses. This is the proportion of flood impacted folks. This is the proportion of household sizes. I think these are interesting. I don't think they inform decisions that we made today. The proportion of single family homes, like, that's significant, but the number of units in those other categories might make it so that the number of units are half and half, you can say. This is comfort level with mortgage. And I can get you the information on which side is more comfortable and which side is less, which feels very important.
What's the y-axis on that?
It's a one, yeah, let me, hang on, sorry, just a second.
The scale, right?
Yeah,
0 to 15 in comfortability?
1 to 5.
Okay.
So how comfortable are you with having a mortgage if you own a home? 1 is I don't want debt at all. 5 is I'm very comfortable with debt if it lets me get my ideal space. Next, we've got, are you interested in contributing labor? 1 is I don't want to contribute labor at all. 5 is I'm very interested in contributing labor to my home. As you build your new home, will you need assistance? 1 is absolutely will need help. 5 is confident will not need help. Specifically, the way it was phrased is, will you need assistance such as a construction loan? So that's worth.
Yeah, because it's all about how you ask.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, turns out surveys are just so hard to phrase and process. So some of the things that I want to know from y'all are, we've got 28 responses. We'll have maybe a few more trickling in, but we have a interest form that we could post to Facebook and Front Porch Forum. Does that feel good? Group approval to go ahead and post that into forum? Great, okay, we're gonna do that. Are there is there other information? Oh, and then the really important graphs, which Sandy showed y'all, about Montpelier, we don't have for Plainfield yet. I'm just not very good with Excel yet. So understanding, right, the graph of, where people fall on the home value chart and where people fall on the for how much they're able to afford, and the combination of those two charts, which Sandy got into some last time. I don't have fully synthesized, but I wanted to show you these to show you what kinds of information we can extract. I wanted to know who wants the raw data anonymously. To extract different information, or if you'd like me to extract different information, I can get it to you.
I might want some of it if I'm working with Sandy, I'm figuring out some of the placements after some kind of preliminary design is done.
Awesome. And then it feels like maybe it could come in handy for planning out like lot sizes. Does that feel?
You know, the one thing that Sandy said that I found, really relevant to that is the household size.
Yeah.
That was surprising, and I don't know whether that's an N of one in Montpelier, but I suspect maybe not, the household sizes may be shrinking. Or our demographic has a smaller household size, one or the other. And I don't think we're necessarily.
Single person was, I was surprised at how high that is.
A single person home. And it,
Yeah,
yeah, Sandy pushes for the tiny home solution, many tiny homes, and my impulse is multiple multi-unit
Yeah.
buildings. But then contrast that with what people want, right? People want their own separate space. So I don't know how to balance those two
I
things.
have a thought, because I noticed the demographics of the graphs from Montpelier and the fact that it was either 1 or 2 person households. Part of that is certainly our state and actual national demographics. We're getting older. That's no new news, I'm sure, to any of you. But also, I think that is also a telltale sign that we are not family friendly. Like, we are making it really hard to be a family in Vermont, maybe central Vermont particularly. I don't know, but I think that that might be a sign. And so when we're planning our community, I want to be mindful of who we want to try to attract, as well as who is already here.
That's, as a family of 4,
Yeah,
I can tell you, in central Vermont, it's incredibly hard to live in this state.
yeah.
And so that most likely that single family home type thing is reflecting the reality that people aren't planning on having families necessarily. They're not
Well, I would
necessarily,
argue that they're old and they are already
Or they're old.
beyond that, yes.
both of those.
Right,
know,
but that's my.
I just
is
spoke
The
to-
younger generation.
I just spoke to somebody in a different demographic, and told him about this. He's a longtime renter in Montpelier, one of my former coworkers, and was telling him about it. He's really interested, likes Plainfield, and I said, you know, we're talking about the family size of 1 or 2, and he says, yeah, you know, I think I just want to live by myself.
There's
And
that.
so there is a trend out there that doesn't relate just to older empty nesters. I think there is a trend of younger folks who just haven't partnered up also, and at 40 don't intend to, or I'm guessing his age. but-
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of winds there. There's a lot of headwinds there, so.
Yeah.
That's most
I
likely.
just want to be thinking about like why it is as it is, you know, and I want to see families like yours, Walker. I want to see youth in our streets, in our schools.
I can tell you on the economic side of all of the things that have happened in this town over the last couple of years, you're not gonna get families of 4 building houses in Plainfield without some significant changes in the
Absolutely.
basic housing process. They're gonna buy old funky farmhouses up in somewhere in
East,
Northeast Kingdom.
east
Yeah.
bum.
Yeah. That's what they're gonna do. Let's just start with where we are.
Let's move along. Kim?
Okay, I think we can make it pretty quick. Everybody was emailed the Boston Globe article. That's a PDF. If it's nice because you get to read it that way, otherwise the Globe has a paywall. For what it's worth, it looks like that inspired some other, like, people have reported on that article, like according to the Boston Globe, like, and different little news outlets, actually, I think maybe even worldwide, which caught my interest. On the agenda, I'm not sure if or to what degree, how much we want to discuss the letter of concern that went around to everybody. I can add the additional context that, and I checked with Lauren, that came to Lauren from Francis Rose. Lauren said, do you want us to do anything about this? And Francis Rose said, no action needed at this time. It also was accompanied with, I don't think this went around to everyone, a note that on behalf of this.
I forwarded the whole thing to
Oh,
everybody.
including the letter that said.
Yeah,
this-
that very night.
Okay, I couldn't, I'm sorry, I missed.
That's
it.
okay.
So everybody knows that
Mhm.
that was ahead of the select board discussing relevant. Given the time, that might be, all I will say. I'm trying to add more information to the website. In particular, I would like to pull together, kind of like an information sheet on real basics of what this loan that the select board did move ahead with will cover. So I'm looking for some insights into generalities of what final engineering means, because I think it could give people some just nice information, let them into the process. And I think some of the outstanding questions people have about, let's say, stormwater and how that's going to be addressed, there will at least be a connection for people who care to look to see designing stormwater runoff will be a part of final engineering, so that there's some dots connected there and keeping people in the loop in an appropriate way, not expecting like a penny by penny kind of breakdown, but some generalities and continue to get information out there.
Any more discussion on the? Well, in that case, I would like to abuse power and declare this meeting over by fiat.
So abused.
Seconded.
Yeah.